Welcome, everyone, to our podcast, Hypnotica, with Chantelle and Melissa. I'm so excited today to be here to talk with you all about the pros and cons of therapy. So, to start us off, Melissa, what has been your experience with the pros and cons of therapy?
Oh, let's see. I was sent to therapy when I was 15, which is like a whole nother story for like a whole nother day. And I remember feeling really scared at first because I was terrified of judgment. I was afraid of what the therapist would think about me. I was afraid if other people found out I was in therapy, what they were going to think about me. There was still a stigma attached to it because this was in the late 90s. So there was still like, oh, you're crazy if you need therapy, or something's like really wrong with you if you need therapy. At the same time, before I even met this woman, in my mind, I'm like, you know what? Someone is going to listen to me. I will have the space to talk, to be seen, to be heard without judgment, because this person is a professional. Why would they be out here judging me when this is like what they do? And I was so lucky that my very first experience was so loving and so kind and so open that it really solidified in my mind, my very young mind, that this was good for me. This was right for me. This is what I wanted to do, where I wanted to be in terms of having the space to be really true and real and honest with someone. And then that snowballed for years afterwards. Like I stopped for a moment. That therapist ended up moving. A few years went by, started seeing someone else that I hired. I was 21 at the time. And similar experience. It's great. It was amazing. Lots of listening. Probably too much listening if we look at the cons of therapy. I needed a little bit more of like things to do to work on the processing and the healing of what was going on. Like I had some things to do, but she did more listening than actual giving me tools to work with. And then many years later, in my mid 30s, I was seeing someone who was amazing at first. And I was like, great, perfect fit. And then as time went on, the judgment started, and it started to feel unsafe to be there, where I'm like, okay, it started with, in my mind, feeling judged and being like, you know what, we'll just like press pause on this topic. I just won't talk about this topic. And that happened with another topic. I'm like, hey, you know what, we won't talk about this topic. And then I was like, why am I going? Like, why am I here if it feels unsafe now to share about my experience? I am also the type of person, and I understand this can be really annoying for therapists, for my friends, for my coaches. Like, I need sometimes to talk some subjects to death before I get tired of my own BS. So everybody has a different threshold. And I think she was probably tired of hearing me talk about the same thing. But at the same time, I also feel that a discussion should be happening, not this like air of judgment that was coming through everything. So that is a nutshell of my experiences of therapy, of everything mostly being great, mostly being very helpful. I am to the point now where coaching has helped almost fast track results for me, because there's been a blend of a lot of listening, a lot of compassion, a lot of presence, but then there's also equal parts action of like, okay, this is what you need to do about this. My experiences of therapy, there's been just more listening and processing, less action. And I am the type of person where I need equal parts, both things. Does that even
Wow,
answer your question?
yeah, I love hearing all of your experiences about therapy. Like there's just something to be said about each one, right? I feel
Hmm.
like it's very important at the, almost before you dive into therapy, the sort of get to know you session to see if you're a good fit for each other, that the client would be able to say, this is what I need, or this
Hmm.
is what I've experienced in past therapy sessions, this is what I don't like, this is what I like. So you can kind of get a feel for what they need and if that is something you can provide.
Hmm.
So I feel like just like there's so many different kinds of clients, there's also so many different kinds of therapists, right? And for myself, I always look for someone who's able to witness me without judgment, like kind of see me from their heart space, be able to go in their heart space and witness me versus just witnessing me from the mind. Because I feel like the mind is always in duality, always in judgment. And I'm very sensitive to that kind of thing. And so definitely important for me to find someone who can witness from their heart. Also someone who has kind of been there before, who has
Hmm.
navigated similar obstacles that I'm trying to navigate currently. Someone who's like not necessarily in therapy weekly forever, but someone who is, growing and learning and goes to therapy when they need it and doesn't feel like they have all their ducks in a row and their answers are the answers for everyone and they're here to impart them to you, like that is
Right.
not my style of therapist that I look for. But I
Mhm.
feel like some people need more of a masculine energy in their therapist, like someone who's going to be like, this is your homework, this is what you need to do, blah blah blah, like they just want to be told, right? um a lot of people prefer the more feminine energy, which is more of like, I'm here to listen, I'm here to hold space for you. There are many solutions, all of the solutions are in yourself, like in your higher self, and we're just here to find what works best for you and like have just a new perspective, a clearer perspective, like, yeah.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
so with me too, like I've been to different kinds of therapists. The talk therapist I didn't find as helpful because I would just get on this train of just blah blah blah, right? And like rehashing my problems over and over again. It was like a cycle. I feel like I
Mhm.
needed a therapist to kind of like pattern interrupt me and be like, I don't mean to offend at all. This is the process. I just want to get your permission ahead of time. I'm going to interrupt and be like, is there another choice here that we haven't considered, like, and so I feel like therapy giving more choice and yeah, a clearer perspective. I feel like when we could calm our minds down and practice more mindfulness, and like mindfulness is a therapy technique very similar to hypnotherapy. um when we could calm our minds down, it's kind of like stepping in a river of water you where like the mud on the bottom is stirred up, right? So it makes the water all cloudy. But
Mhm.
when you can like let it settle, when you can let your mind settle and just get into a more peaceful space, um, like the theta brainwave space, like right before you wake up, right before you go to sleep, like when you're just really calm, then you're able to see a different perspective on things a lot of time, and you're able to open your mind to a little bit more choice versus just continuing the same pattern. And so, yeah, that's that's been kind of my experience in therapy. Um, the pros and cons, I feel like sometimes they could be the same thing. Like,
Mhm.
for example, I think the biggest fear that people come with for therapy is either a fear of change, which is, can be good or bad in life, right?
Mhm.
Depending on how you look at it. Most people who come to therapy want some kind of change in their life,
Yep.
or like they're ready for it. A lot of times people come with like a fear, well, like we said before, a fear of judgment. Um, but also, I think the biggest thing is the feeling of your feelings. People are afraid to feel their feelings. They've been stuffing them down for all these years, right? And if
Mhm.
they actually feel like a balloon ready to pop, right? Like they just, I think understanding that that's the way out, like that's the way to feel better, is to release some of these feelings. And I've made it my life's mission to find the most comfortable way to do that. And I feel like hypnotherapy is the most comfortable way to do that because it doesn't put you in a place of panic. You know, it
Yeah.
puts you in a state of calm while you're releasing these, and like just a space of where your therapist is witnessing you from their heart, like this space of no judgment. And it's just releasing what needs to be released, learning what needs to be learned, and then, figuring out in the future what you want your future to look like instead of the mind being so set on that track of like, this is the way it's always been. I can't get out, like all those thought traps, right? To
Mm-hmm.
be able to be like, what do I want instead?
Yes, absolutely. I agree. I feel like hypnotherapy is one of the most gentle ways. And as you're talking, I'm like remembering, I've had some people tell me that they are afraid of hypnotherapy because they feel like there's this loss of control. To an extent, there is, and it does require a lot of trust in the therapist, obviously, and a lot of trust in yourself that not only are you being held by the therapist, but you're holding yourself too. And I cannot, y'all, cannot stress this enough of how gentle that is. So if you feel afraid of talking about what's going on with you, or you feel overwhelmed by that, to me, hypnotherapy is the gentlest way of starting to open up the door, because like you're not going to have the door blasted open. You're going to ease into opening the door. So in that, you'll learn that there's so much self-trust that you have available for yourself, and then you're also trusting your therapist to guide you through it. It's not, at least in my experience, it has not been something that is scary or overwhelming or, oh my God, what are we doing? It's not like that.
Yeah, there's just so many misconceptions about it. I mean, one is that you just can't wake up by yourself or can't say no, but like that couldn't be further from the truth. Like
Exactly.
at any time, you could just open your eyes and be like, nope, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not like you're stuck in it. And yeah, the stuff that I do is I like the conscious mind and the subconscious mind to be on board. So it's like a sort of a
Mm-hmm.
mid state there. It's not like you're totally asleep or you're totally awake. I find when you're
Mm-hmm.
totally awake with your conscious mind, it can like often just talk you out of things. Like the fears are just so loud that and it's just so easy to stay on that same track, like with the talk therapy, like just going over and over and over, like this is my problem, that's always been my problem, it's always going to be my problem. It's like there's got to be some sort of yeah, like some sort of way to navigate it. And that's what I love about metaphors, like
Mm-hmm.
in hypnosis, because you don't have to like dig up the actual past. Like you don't
Yeah.
have to go to the details, and you're like, what does it remind you of? Well, it reminds me of this corn maze, or whatever the person comes up with, right? Like you just go with what they come up with, and what they want to, what's needed in the situation, right? Like all the answers are really in their mind, and
Mm-hmm.
it's someone from with a compassionate heart of witness to, and someone very curious and playful to get those answers for them. And I find parts therapy just to be amazing, especially for someone who is coming with a lot of shame. And I find depression, like the root of it often is shame, where they think they're a bad person.
Mm-hmm.
Spoiler, you're not a bad person.
Nope.
Um,
Mm-mm.
there's no bad parts. We just need to like listen to those parts and get playful and curious. And yeah, I find that that's just a very helpful way to do therapy, is just to get so curious about things, like what part of you, is feeling this way, and
Mm-hmm.
what would they prefer. It's just getting really specific, so that so many times in our lives we get these triggers and we're like, oh, where did that come from? Like, oh, that wasn't me, like that was so
Yep.
out of character for me. And like it's embarrassing. It's like I don't want that part to just get out of control, start driving the bus on me. Like that
Mm-hmm.
that's another
Yes.
reason, another pro to go to therapy. It's like you don't want those triggers and panic attacks happening, and
Mm-mm.
they can't be prevented.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So I don't know. There's a lot to be said about therapy. I feel like the concept of yin and yang is very appropriate here when you're talking about the pros and cons, because what can be a con for someone can also be a pro for another. For example,
Hmm.
like um the fear of feeling your feelings, right? So feeling your feelings, people would be like, okay, like that's a con for me. But once you've been there and done that and you feel how amazing, how much lighter you feel after feeling those feelings, it's definitely a pro.
Absolutely. Yes. It's just, yeah, getting through that process and getting there initially doesn't always feel that way because it's not comfortable, but you learn. Like, that is the whole point of learning how to do the things and be there for yourself. Yeah.
And also like the fear of change, right? So the fear of change
Mhm.
is both a con and a pro, right? And people think like, oh no, like I'm gonna just change like day and night. I'm gonna be a different personality. No, there's baby steps. It's not. You're not gonna change that fast, and it's definitely always gonna be in your control to change what you want to change. And
Mhm.
yeah, I guess my biggest recommendation overall for people looking for a therapist, find someone who has similar values to you, who,
Mhm.
kind of someone that you would want to be friends with. I'm not saying to
Yeah.
be friends with your therapist. I'm just saying you got to have that rapport there, that you don't feel like they're judging you. Like you got to have
Yep.
that you're kind of on the same page. You're wanting the same things. If you have a similar intention, and you have similar ideas about how to move forward with that.
Mhm. Absolutely.
You got to have that
Yes.
trust. Got to know, like, and trust the person. That's what rapport is.
Yes.
Know, like, and trust. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah, before diving in with all your big stuff and saying, "This is my therapist," make sure that
Mhm.
you're a good fit.
Yeah. Yeah, and you feel comfortable. And I use that's a hard word to use too. Like, yeah, we want to feel comfortable, but you don't want to, what is it? Almost be so comfortable where, yeah, you treat your therapist like a friend. It's like, hold up, no, this is still, you're still wanting to be guided through your experience.
I do
What
think
is
there's
it?
something to that sort of girl talk thing, though, because there's oftentimes parts of us that feel shame, or we feel like, if they knew my deepest darkest secret, they wouldn't like me anymore, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's all about feeling comfortable, like you said, enough with your therapist that that no matter what you bring them, they're not gonna they're gonna have an unconditional positive regard for you.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. Mm, I love it.
Yeah, who doesn't want that, right?
I know. I'm like, oh yeah, to feel very open and at ease in your sessions. Yeah, that's where I find that that's where the majority of my healing has happened, just from being at ease with someone, where I'm like, okay, I'm not broken. No one's broken. We can have this conversation. There's no judgment. And then I hear myself better. And if I'm hearing myself and listening to myself, then I'm not falling into the same patterns I've been falling into. Yeah.
Yeah, like if those parts of ourselves are safe to be heard from our therapist, they're also safe to be heard from ourselves.
Yes.
And when we could kind of meet those parts of ourselves, we can have some dialogue on our own with those parts, like that's very important homework, to have that dialogue when those parts come up. It's like, what do you
Yes.
need? Like, even though
Mm-hmm.
I feel this, I still love myself and give myself what I need.
Yeah.
Like, how can we get more curious, more compassionate, more loving towards those parts of ourselves, and
Mm-hmm.
retrain the brain to listen to the inner coach versus the inner critic?
Yes. Oh my God. Absolutely. Definitely. Yay. Is there anything else you want to share about the pros and cons.
No, I think that pretty much that sums it up.
Excellent. All right, y'all. Well, join us next week where we're going to be talking about the hypnotic concepts for life and for the bedroom. The erotic hypnotic concepts, I should say. Yes. Because that goes everywhere.
Sounds
Yay.
great.
All right, y'all. See you in a week.
Bye.